In a quiet suburban neighborhood known as Maple Grove, a man named Robert Sterling found himself at a crossroads, framed by the modest wooden fence that had marked his property for decades. It had been a normal day in late spring when he discovered the formal envelope lying on his doorstep, its weight belied in the thick folds of paper. Robert, shaking off the remnants of his recent retirement, recognized the insignia emblazoned on the front: the Maple Grove Homeowners Association, a stern reminder of the ongoing tensions simmering beneath the surface of the community's pristine image. The letter inside was as cold as it was official, spelling out the HOA's grievances and outlining a staggering fine of $50,000. His heart sank as he read the words, "violation of community standards," with the implied accusation resting heavily in the air. His fence, celebrating its 60th year, was deemed unsuitable. It was not just an aesthetic offense, they declared, it was a blight on what they insisted was a harmonious neighborhood. Robert couldn't help but feel anger welling inside him. This simple wooden fence, painted in muted greens and grays, had witnessed the love and laughter of his family. It carried a legacy, one that was trivialized by the demands of Nancy Caldwell, the HOA's president, whose ambition and control had increasingly encroached upon his life. He remembered when he had first received a letter from her, demanding he trim the hedges and paint the mailbox to align with a list of community-approved colors. At the time, he had chuckled, thinking it a little excessive. After all, his goal had always been to live quietly, attending to the garden and tending to memories of his late wife, who had passed away nearly 3 years ago. Life had slowed considerably, and the serenity of Maple Grove had become a sanctuary. How had it come to this? The days turned into weeks, and the letters from the HOA escalated, each one a more brazen attempt to micromanage every aspect of his life. The growth of wildflowers in his garden was listed as an inappropriate landscape, while his old barn, standing as a testament to his family's origins, was condemned for being an eyesore. Now, standing in his yard, he realized they weren't merely looking for compliance. They were trying to destroy his sense of belonging, to push him away from a place he loved. But Robert Sterling held a powerful secret, one that the HOA had never bothered to discover. Long ago, in the haze of the 70s, when his father sold most of their land to incoming developers, he made sure to retain one critical piece of ownership: the single access road that served as the lifeline for all of Maple Grove. Over a mile long, this road wound through lightly wooded stretches, connecting homes with the outside world, and while the HOA had ruled as if it were public property, it was anything but. They had never bothered to inquire about its ownership, assuming that Robert, with his unkempt property and weathered hands, was just another retiree too worn down to engage in a fight. As he crumpled the letter in his hand, a flicker of determination ignited in him. It was time to take a stand, not for the sake of pride, but for the community he had cherished for so long. Gripping the handle of a sturdy shovel, he trudged to his shed, the dim lighting illuminating a trove of tools his father had used years before. He had always been a soldier of silence, opting to handle matters without confrontation. Now, with the HOA having crossed a line, he was prepared to wield his power. In the days that followed, Robert stayed busy gathering every document he possessed concerning the land, meticulously reviewing the original deeds, maps, and legal agreements. He reached out to Frank, an old friend from his engineering days who had made a name for himself as a coveted property lawyer. When they met, a sense of camaraderie pervaded the air. "Are you telling me that the road everyone uses isn't even held by the HOA? They just assumed?" Frank's eyebrows lifted in disbelief as Robert nodded. Exactly. They've been walking over a legal minefield without knowing it. They think they can bully me into submission over a fence. They don't know the game they're playing. With Frank's help, Robert began constructing a legal defense, determined to counter the HOA's aggressive tactics. He could sense that Nancy, with her penchant for controlling every detail of the community, was growing more desperate by the day. She sent warning letters, pacing the neighborhood with a sense of entitlement, making calls that traveled across yards like whispers. Unbeknownst to her, she was playing with fire. Conflict grew palpable when one evening, as Robert tended to his garden, he caught sight of two burly men exiting a van emblazoned with the HOA's logo. As they approached his home, he could feel a prickling sensation race through him. They bore drab uniforms, clearly meant to intimidate, because they weren't here to plead with him. They were sent to assert dominance. "Mr. Sterling," the larger man announced, striding forward. His deep-set tattoos twisted around his neck like creeping vines. "We're here to conduct a property inspection," he stated assuredly, a predatory smile curving his lips. Robert gripped his shovel tightly, channeling the unfolding confrontation. "You don't have permission to be here," he replied, his voice steady against the storm of indignation brewing within him. The officer's smile faltered for only a moment, but still he grimaced, a hollow threat rising, akin to dry twigs ready to catch fire. "You'll regret this, old man," he said, the words an incredulous challenge before he left. As they retreated back to their imposing vehicle, Robert felt waves of anger wash over him. This was not merely about a fence, a flower bed ruined, or an unkempt lawn. This was an invasion of his personal space and dignity. Over the following days, they sent men to rip down his father's wooden fence. Their claims of it being a safety hazard fell unceremoniously flat to Robert. It was a violation of land he considered sacred. When he raised his concerns to Frank, they forged ahead to take a stand. But it was clear the HOA intended to make him suffer. Soon after, Robert faced the ultimate betrayal, a neighbor informing him that his golden retriever, Ella, had gone missing, the dog he had raised since she was a pup. Frantic, he searched through the garden, combed the property, and scoured the neighborhood for any sign of her. His heart raced until a neighbor's call snapped his despair. "You might want to come to my place," came the voice, laden with concern. "Saw a dark van late last night. Ella's here, but you won't believe this." When he arrived, horror struck him like cold steel. Several pets had been collected from neighbors, cats, dogs, and even rabbits locked within the van. It was a blatant act of power, retaliation, and Robert's anger raged. While the authorities were contacted, nothing could be done. The HOA had their tactics honed like a sharpened blade, hiding their wrongdoing beneath thin veneer. Weeks progressed. Escalating conflicts revealed the true nature of Nancy's ambitions. Then came the most shocking revelation. A utility truck arrived one summer afternoon, poised to sever his electric power. "What do you think you're doing?" Robert confronted them, anger sparking through his veins. "We've been instructed to shut off your services, Mr. Sterling, until you comply with HOA standards," the worker responded, unapologetically. Feeling his blood boil to uncontrollable levels, Robert refused to back down. Instead, he entered his shed and retrieved his toolbox, the very one filled with the memories of labor and love. Within moments, he managed to cease the electricity and water supply for the entire house, standing before their team with defiance radiating from every fiber of his. The neighborhood began splitting, some siding with Robert, while others clutched tightly to Nancy's power. Desperation seeped from the HOA, prompting them to schedule an emergency meeting as the atmosphere of Maple Grove grew fraught with tension. This was it, Robert thought. It would be time to reclaim not only his dignity, but the respect owed to his family and every other resident who felt oppressed. Preparing meticulously, he gathered his legal documents, reviews, and community disappointments. He vowed to confront Nancy in front of the audience she had once commanded. The day of the meeting, tension filled the air, thick and nearly electric. Robert took his seat in the back of the crowded community center as Nancy presided at the helm, poised and proud. "Thank you, everyone, for attending," she began with a tone full of authority. "As we know, there have been ongoing issues with one resident, Robert Sterling, who has continuously disregarded our rules. We are here to discuss necessary steps." Finally, Robert could bear no more. He stood slowly, the room falling silent with his every movement. "Nancy," he interjected, his voice rolling through the air like thunder. "You've made a severe mistake, and it cuts deeper than just the dues you've labeled for me. You think you own Maple Grove, but the truth is, I own the road that leads us all in and out." Shock rippled through the room. Whispers of disbelief began swirling like an energetic current, transforming the meeting's reverberation. He presented each document, every legal right, revealing how they had built their sense of community on shouldering his existence aside. With each paper he placed down, the crowd grew restless, their understanding unraveling. What had once seemed a harmless HOA was, in fact, the machinations of control wielded by Nancy, her grip on their lives unveiled. "I'm not here to demand respect," he stated coldly, "but it is time for all of you to understand the truth. They have bullied and manipulated to control us. No more fines, no more threats. I will allow no more violations against my property, nor yours." The murmurs turned to discontent within the community. They began to rally behind Robert. The truth broke forth like sunlight behind clouds. Suddenly Mavis, a quiet resident who had observed silently for years, stood in solidarity. "I've lived here long enough to see what you're doing, Nancy. We're with Robert." As more residents voiced their agreement, the tides of support fully turned. Nancy, visibly shaken, faltered. No longer did she command respect. Rather, she stood a figure of opposition against her own community. She attempted to reassert her authority, but the trust she held crumbled like dry leaves. Later that week, with a power struggle culminated, Robert positioned a hand-painted sign at the entrance of the road, declaring it private. Suddenly, cars were backed up, with delivery trucks and school buses refusing to move. Each vehicle a symbolic blockade against the tyranny of the HOA. Nancy desperately tried to face Robert in a muted, anxious phone call. "We need to talk," she said, her demeanor coiling in desperation. "You should have sought discussion before this," he countered gently. "Now you'll need to address my lawyer." Days ran on, and a wave of community unity allowed the negotiation process to begin. Robert stood firm with his demands for an official apology, Nancy's resignation, the HOA's dissolution, and lastly, the renewed implicit control over the access road. With pressure mounting and the community now united, Nancy was forced to submit. At the next gathering, when she faced the crowd of neighbors, it felt as though the air had been sucked clean from the room. "I apologize to Robert Sterling and the community for the overreach," she murmured with downcast eyes. The absence of applause spoke volumes. Freedom returned to the community. Almost without a second thought, Robert recast the burden of disillusionment into a symbol of triumph. He reopened the road, charging a modest fee of $1, signed his lease, and celebrated with quiet dignity. In the months following, peace swept over Maple Grove. A new council emerged, one forged by the people, and it breathed a gentle life full of camaraderie. The new policies paid homage to the spirit of neighborliness. Flowers bloomed in areas unapproved before, children ventured freely, and laughter echoed through yards. Visitors often visited Robert, recounting stories of resistance with warmth. Lessons of resiliency and community emerged, woven into the daily fabric of life. The old fence was lovingly restored, reflecting both heritage and innovation. Above all, it stood as a symbol that the quiet would no longer be meek. The fight transcended an individual. Robert showcased his father's toolbox, now framed beside the official lease, a testament that legacy could be protected, that determination could forge harmony anew. He taught children through the warm afternoons how to build birdhouses, each hammering board echoing a gentle reminder of courage and character. Through it all, Robert's journey revealed the essence of a community, a reminder that while the spotlight chases bravado, the strength of a neighborhood often lies in the steadiness of a few quiet souls who will rise for what is right, often crafting unyielding bonds between families, stemming from nothing more than a desire to coexist peacefully. And that, perhaps, is what truly resonates for everyone, standing resolutely against those who forget that the real power of a community is found in its people, echoing the simple truth: the strongest foundations are built through unity, respect, and integrity.